I've been doing sim racing for a while. I used to play like R Factor and Live for Speed and those kind of things, but I was never really good at it. I only really started kind of taking it seriously, like a year or so ago. I think like a lot of people did.
Well, with it being a little bit new for you, then, do you find yourself getting nervous, or do you stay calm right before the start?
Usually I'm pretty nervous. I will say. Last week was no exception.
Honestly, I'm with you too. Even after all these years, I still get a little butterflies when I sit on the grid. Well, I mean, you've started things off with a win. Looking forward at the rest of the tracks in Series 11, have you seen anything on the schedule that you're kind of earmarking and going, "Ooh, I'm good at that one"?
Nothing I'm particularly good at, but I'm from Virginia, so I'd like to do well at VIR.
Hopefully today will be a good training moment, watching these guys race and give you some tips on what to do and what not to do on that one. You said you're from Virginia. Have you ever actually gotten to go to the real VIR?
Yeah, I've been to VIR quite a bunch. I'm closer to Summit Point though, so that's more my home track.
Well, both here on iRacing, so excellent to give you maybe just a little bit of practice. And again, congratulations. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you more throughout the season.
Yes, thank you. Hope so too.
That was Jonathan Fields, your winner from the club class from last week. And that, of course, takes us to the track, Robert. This place, as I said, is a gorgeous facility, but it is difficult to drive.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. This is going to be a very tough race for these drivers tonight. Of course, Spa last week had a bunch of challenges of its own, but now Virginia International Raceway, this 20-turn circuit, 3.27 miles in length, brings its own set of challenges. As you can see here on the track map, a lot of different kinds of corners these drivers are going to have to navigate through. The tough horseshoe up at the top, right from the drop of the green flag, could bring us some challenges this evening as drivers try to jockey for position heading into those corners. And then, of course, they have to go through NASCAR Bend up to the left hook, the snake, and all the way down that long sort of straightaway towards those S's, and then back to the oak tree for another little U-turn out there on the racetrack, setting them up all the way down towards the roller coaster, back through that hog pen and towards the start finish line. So we're going to see a lot of great side-by-side racing. A couple areas to pay attention to here tonight will be the horseshoe and the roller coaster. A couple great passing zones that these drivers will surely try to take advantage of.
No doubt. And it's time for the grid as Casey McDonald has put it on the pole. George Poulos will start from second today. Kevin Schultz will begin from P3. Mehmet Karachai will start in fourth, followed by Jeremy Main, P5, and Alex Lidback in the sixth position. Neil Urbesh will begin from seventh. Olan Murphy, P8, and Johan Nye in the ninth spot. Edward Trippett will start in 10th, followed by Aubrey Iyer on the beginning of the next slide in 11th. Tom Crane, 12th. Donald Green in 13th, and Lisa Eskridge, P14. Then it'll be Art Schwartz, Chris Schusler, Kurt Clifford, and Robert Goulet, rounding out your 18 drivers to start the first race of VIR. We're getting ready for the green flag as they head towards the starting line. And there it is. Green flag is out. McDonald has a pretty good start as he flies down towards the horseshoe. Let's hope that we get a clean one here into the first corner, where it is heavy braking and a double apexer. Someone goes a little wide towards the outside, but Robert, it looks pretty clean.
Yeah, looks like a very clean initial start for these drivers here tonight. Last week's winner, Casey McDonald, able to get out to that initial lead over Kevin Schultz. Schultz was able to take advantage of George Poulos going wide through that first set of corners. He's fallen back to position number 3, trying to hold off Mehmet Karachai in position number 4, as these drivers have all kind of found their spot for the initial laps here at Virginia International Raceway. You don't necessarily want to be jockeying for position too early here, Joe, but you also don't want to let these guys get away from you.
Certainly not. McDonald holds a healthy gap, but not a major one. It's about 0.8 of a second up into the oak tree for the first time. Kevin Schultz carrying on behind him, goes a little bit wide as well. He's going to have a slow exit. Coming on to Madison Avenue, this is going to be killer not having that speed, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. You really want to make sure you get through those corners towards these long straights that the drivers will go through here, as you do see them battling for positions 2 and 3 out there on the track, Kevin Schultz and George Poulos. But again, if you don't get that proper lead up to these straights, you're not going to be able to get the run towards the end. But now, as you see the drivers going through the final sets of corners here, heading towards that start finish line, they were able to get through that hog pen pretty well, and Casey McDonald looks like he's going to lead lap number 1.
And George Poulos certainly gave him a run for his money, but wasn't quite able to do it as he falls off a bit. Watch it a little bit farther back now on the way into turn 1. Get a nice little battle heading to the corner. You can see the various lines the driver's taking through this long right-hander, and then it'll sweep you into NASCAR Bend. Extremely difficult braking into there. So far, we've been good, but I can't imagine everybody's going to keep it on track for the 40 minutes.
That's exactly it. There's going to be drivers that will overstep a little bit, send themselves off the racetrack. It's going to be a race where you're going to want to try to maintain those tires as well, Joe, because of course we do have various sets of corners here that are going into those high elevation changes, also dipping down, and you want to be sure you have that bit of rubber and the braking to be able to set up for those corners, get the car to rotate and set yourself up for the next set here, because one set of corners goes wrong and you could throw your whole lap right out the window.
Ooh, nice move there. You could see in the background as Jeremy Main got by Karachai, and that's going to move Jeremy up into P4, but looks like he might be under attack as he's awful close behind him as well. We've also been following Poulos continuing to put a lot of pressure on Schultz for that second place, but what it has meant is that McDonald is now about 1.2 seconds up the road. He's not really being bothered in these early stages.
Yeah, Casey McDonald able to take advantage of the clean air and no real pressure from behind. Like you mentioned, now over a second and a half ahead of our second place car, Kevin Schultz. And that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to be able to run his own race, set himself up for the entry to the corners the way he wants, not really have to worry about holding off somebody behind him, as we do continue the battle for position 2 and 3. Schultz just holding off Poulos, as Poulos is trying to enter the corners a little bit different than Schultz has so far and trying to set him up for a little bit of a run there. Not quite able to do it. And just a quick note, we did have a car off the racetrack towards the rear. Kirk Clifford went off, and now Jeremy Main has an issue here.
Oh, and prone across the track. That's Karachai, and he's going to try and wait. But yeah, there we go. He finds an opening behind him. He's going to pull off the racing line. That's very smart and gentlemanly of him, because he's going to lose a lot of positions, but he'll be out of everybody's way before he gets it moving once again. Neil Urbesh moves up to 4th because of that issue. Johan Nye enters into the top 5. So a couple drivers that were way high up the order are now way far down.
Yeah, Karachai just now coming back onto the racetrack. He is 6 seconds behind Kirk Clifford for the last position on the racetrack, so he lost a ton here today. He's going to try to get it back as the race progresses and when the pit strategy does come into play, but unfortunately for Karachai, he's going to have a lot of work to do if he wants to get back up there and have himself a solid points day.
So not a lot of drama yet for most drivers, but this will mean that everybody's able to kind of settle in, get this race underway. With 35 minutes left to go, there's still lots that could happen out here. And as you heard Robert mention, the pit stops could play a big factor as well. Still watching second place continue to slip off, now about 1.5 seconds away from the leader. A little bit farther down, looks like maybe a bit of a battle brewing for about 5th, 6th, or 7th. Nye, Murphy, and Trippett have all been kind of getting somewhat closer to one another down there. So they could find themselves into a little bit of a struggle. And it looks like Karachai has found himself on the bad end of the stewards. He's been given a penalty for that contact that sent both he and his rival off.
So a bad night goes even worse for Karachai. He's going to take it to pit road here to serve that penalty. So unfortunately for him, that pit strategy may be huge for him tonight if he wants a chance to gain anything out there. But everyone has seemed to have found their position on the racetrack right now. No real battles going on, which for race control, this is something that they would absolutely love to see. As Chris Schuessler has an issue towards the tail of the field, and looks like he's battling a little bit of mechanical issues getting that car going back in the right direction. So Schuessler in position number 15 now. He's struggling quite a bit back there, Joe.
Yeah, I think he got hit by Gallet when he spun around. Unfortunately, it must have hit the suspension since he got the corner of the car, because you're right, the 61 is struggling. Right now, I still have the cameras up here towards the front. Schultz has been trying to catch McDonald, but to no avail. It's almost up to 2 seconds, and Poulos in behind him has been staying about 1 second. It was some early attacks from that 192 car, Robert, but seems to have dropped off just a little bit and can't seem to keep with him.
Yeah, it could be a case of George Poulos maybe pushing a little bit too hard, as Kevin Schultz actually sets a purple lap there, setting the best lap of the race, 0.2 quicker than Casey McDonald last time by. This is what Kevin Schultz is going to need to do. He's going to knock off those heaters and try to climb his way back towards the front, but that gap now 2.2 seconds between McDonald and Schultz for that top spot on the racetrack. As we do watch the battle for 6th here at the top of the screen. Actually, that's 4th, with Urbesh, Nye, and Murphy all within about a second of each other here. So we could see some nice door-to-door, wheel-to-wheel action momentarily for that 4th position.
Yeah, right now trying to catch up to Neil Urbesh. That is Johan Nye in the orange and black machine as well. And then the orange and blue just behind him is Olan Murphy. Trying to play catch-up as we hop on board, looking backwards from Urbesh, trying to stay with that slipstream, but this is up into the climbing S's. This is where it's going to get difficult, especially with the downforce that these cars have. And as he follows behind in the dirty air, he's able to at least cling to the back somewhat, but it's not close enough for a pass by the time they hit Oak Tree.
And those climbing S's can be a real thorn in the side of these drivers here tonight. If you're steering going into those corners or through those S's, you could find the car to be really unbalanced. As we ride on board here with the 10th place car of Alex Lidback, you can see he's trying to chase down Green out here on the racetrack. Donald Green currently holding position number 9. Lidback trying to set himself up for a nice run here, heading up towards the next set of corners. He's going to have to make that entry work quite well for him to close that gap and try to get that spot away from Green, but Green does a nice job navigating through.
Indeed, and as they head down through Hogpen and back onto the main straight, the 71 going to be able to hold that 9th position for now. Lidback still trying to follow, doesn't quite stay in the tire tracks. He's trying to shorten that front stretch as much as he can. And coming down into the braking now. Oh, excuse me, we've jumped a little bit back from them. Nice fight back here between Schwartz and Gallet. Remember, Robert had made up a spot, but also had contact about a lap or two ago, and he's going to go for another one down into the horseshoe, down to the inside of Art Schwartz, and he's going to have a nice textbook maneuver.
Gallet able to get that spot over Art Schwartz. Now going to work his way into position number 14. So these drivers going to try to continue climbing up here towards the front of the pack. Every position, of course, as we established last week in round number 1, does matter in the season-long championship. Every point works towards getting you up to that top step of the championship podium, but everyone else seems to have settled out a little bit. There's a small battle brewing between Tom Crane and Jeremy Main for position number 11. Crane currently holds the spot. Main keeps closing the gap on entry to the corners, but once we get to the straightaways, he's just able to pull away. As we get back to that battle for position number 4, is Neil Urbesh currently holding that spot over Johan Nye, Olau Murphy, and Edward Trippett just outside of that battle as well. So 4th through 7th, all under a rather large blanket here, but about to put on a show for us.
Yeah, if someone gets a good run down the main straight, there could be an opportunity. Does look like maybe Murphy could be close to nigh here, and Urbesh is going to stay well out of reach, but I think looks like they're going to stay as they were as we ride on board with Johan Nye, looking forward up ahead to Neil down at the breaking of the horseshoe. This gives you a real good idea of how tricky it can be trying to get these corners right, especially coming up here into NASCAR bends. This is a curved braking zone and gives plenty of room on the right-hand side, it appears, but definitely uses up the exit with that new extra paved runoff.
And this can definitely be a tricky set of corners, setting them up to head down the straightaway towards those climbing S's. And again, that's another challenging part of the racetrack in itself. But these drivers now going to try to take advantage of a bitter draft heading towards those S's. We'll see if Nye is able to close the gap on Urbesh at all. You can see the air getting underneath those beautiful Porsches as they work their way around the racetrack here. But these drivers, they all seem to be holding their own on the racetrack, holding their positions, but you can see the hunger starting to pick up a little bit more as we ride on board with Lisa Eskridge down there on the bottom of your screen. We'll keep an eye on that fourth place battle up at the top, and it does look like it's getting even closer as Johan Nye right on the tail of Neil Urbesh. This could get interesting.
He's given it a big look, but I think he's too shallow into the roller coaster and indeed not able to brake late enough to overtake Neil. So he'll stay put in that fifth position. He's got to watch out. Olan Murphy caught up a bunch there under braking as this is close here for Lisa on Tom Crane. She also takes a bit of a peek but can't quite do it. Meanwhile, Olan Murphy now has got a huge run, and from the attacker to the defender, Johan Nye has to switch gears.
Yeah, Johan Nye trying to hold that position. He has a hard charging Olan Murphy as Murphy takes a dive to driver's left, not quite able to get there this time. Going to fall back in line, try to set himself up for another opportunity to take a dive to the inside of Johan Nye here. As these drivers all on top of each other, we'll see this time maybe, just maybe, we'll see another dive here out of Olan Murphy. Looks like he's going to fall back just a little bit now. Edward Trippett going to try to set himself up for a pass here on Murphy for position number 6. This battle has been very good for a handful of laps now, Joe.
I thought he was going to get that big defense there from Johan Nye down into the left hook, but still stays where he is. This one certainly has been an exciting one between them, but nobody's been able to really maximize that. And coming up into the oak tree once more up ahead of them, Neil Urbesh really relishing the two of them, giving him that little bit of space by their fighting.
Yeah, Urbesh able to pull away, like you mentioned. He has about a second and a half over Johan Nye, and Nye now about a second behind him is where we find Olan Murphy. These drivers have stretched out just a little bit from each other, but we've seen that on numerous occasions so far here, Joe, where the drivers kind of recoil, get themselves set back up, and make that jump back into the opportunity to dive for position. Is once again, you can see it right there, Johan Nye and Olan Murphy closing back up to each other here. Murphy looking once again for the opportunity to get up and pass Nye. We'll see if it happens this time by. I don't think it's going to happen before the line. It doesn't, but these drivers look like they're getting set to put on another show here for us.
Just staying so tantalizingly close and not far behind them. We were following Green before. Jeremy Main has now caught up to him, and he's going to be looking around the outside, potentially down into the horseshoe, tries to cut back underneath. Remember, Main was fighting for a top 5 position earlier in this race and then had the contact with Mimit. But he's going to get into the back of his rival as Green takes a punt from behind, but thankfully they both stay on the track. That's the second bit of contact for poor Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy Main into the rear end of Donald Green. Just behind them, Tom Crane closing that gap right back up towards them. So this could become a 3-car, actually 4-car race, as Lisa Eskridge not too far behind them this time. But a bit of damage now to the nose of Jeremy Main. As we ride on board with Tom Crane, you can see that battle up ahead. He's licking his lips here. He's getting ready to make that pounce the next time these drivers come together, which, with the intensity that they've shown so far, it wouldn't shock me to see another bit of contact there, as you do see Main slide a little bit far to the left. He's able to set himself up, though, for a nice run up the straight just behind the Donald Green machine. And these drivers not taking it easy on each other here tonight.
Yeah, it looks like nobody is quite close enough to make that pass, although they're definitely being pulled in by that slipstream. Now, of course, it is time once again for the PCA Sim Racing Tech Tactics Live. And we have Jeff Williams with us once more. Now, last week, or well, 2 weeks ago, really, we talked about why PCA does not use SR or the iRacing licenses to determine where to place drivers. Jeff, how exactly does the PCA SR do their driver classifications? Oh, it might not have Jeff in here. Let's see if we can get him. There we go. Now we've got Jeff. Jeff, we were just saying, we talked to you 2 weeks ago about why PCA doesn't do their classification the way they do. But let's talk about this week. How does the PCA do their SR driver classifications?
Yeah, Joe, you bet. We have a classification workflow process. It's a bit involved, but the Reader's Digest version is this. We continually collect series race data on all our drivers. And at the end of each series, we use the data from the 8 most recent races to rebalance the classes prior to the next series. So the primary metric is average percent off pace. What this means is we are taking the average of a driver's fastest races, and the driver with the fastest average pace across their races is at the top of the list. All the rest of the drivers are in order below them based on how their average pace compares to the top driver. Take this list, divide it into 4 quartiles. The top quartile is pro, second is club, third is sport, that's where I live, and fourth is challenge. And we also factor in things like average incidents, penalties, fastest lap average, resulting in a proposed class for each driver. Most stay in their current class, but we know data can be imperfect, so the instructor-coach team reviews and reaches consensus on moving a driver to a different class if the metrics indicate a move. And I do need to give a big shout out to Stephen Chen. He's our resident wizard collecting and organizing all this data for us.
Well, I have to admit that I definitely appreciate the people that are willing to crunch the numbers, because it's not my thing. Anybody who watches this channel knows that I'm not a math person. So thank you, Jeff, and everybody who helps do that and put these drivers in the right place.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you.
That's Jeff Williams. Hopefully we'll get to see him on track a little bit later. But right now, it's been getting a little bit tense there. Murphy pulled right up to the back of Nye there, Robert. But again, wasn't able to do anything. Almost looks like he feels a bit tentative, and I don't blame him. The roller coaster is a tricky place to pass.
Yeah, you have to set yourself up for the right moment to make that move. You don't want to take the high-risk opportunity to make an attempt at the pass, especially in the first half of the race. If it gets down to the later portion, maybe you opt to potentially overstep a little bit to gain a spot out on the racetrack. But you can tell these drivers racing smart right now. But I do just want to mention that battle that we were looking at earlier. Donald Green, Jeremy Main, Lisa Eskridge, and Tom Crane, as Jeremy Main nearly punts the Donald Green machine right off of the racetrack, Joe, back out towards the tail of the top 10. So this is getting intense out here.
Certainly seems like it is for a few drivers as we continue to follow on Murphy with him trying to challenge Nye, and look at him cut back underneath. In fact, Nye is going to pit in, so he'll make life a little bit easier. Maybe this will give him an undercut, though. We'll see if Murphy can now push now that he's got the clear air. Usually the overcut is the call here in these cars, but you never know, especially if that lead car felt like he was driving worse under pressure and now can kind of cool and clear his head. But you were talking about that battle between Green and Main, and you're right. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. And Main is trying to make up for his lost time, but having a little bit of trouble on making some of those passes. There it is on the bottom now as he goes around the outside. Last time he tried this, he got into the back of Donald Green. Let's see if he can find a way around this time.
Yeah, not quite yet as Donald Green able to hold on to that position ahead of Jeremy Main, but this is allowing Lisa Eskridge to close up as once again Jeremy Main takes a dive on the outside of Donald Green. Not quite able to make it happen that time as they nearly make contact once again, but this battle that was previously 2 cars has now worked its way back to 5 as Donald Green, Jeremy Main, Lisa Eskridge, Robert Goulet, and Tom Crane all under a blanket here together, duking it out for position 8 through 12 on the racetrack. So great battle that we're seeing here, and so far never mind, I was just about to say they've all stayed on the racetrack, but that just changed right there.
And those who are very eagle-eyed may have noticed a car off in the background. That was Tom Crane, who found himself off the track. So he fell down to 11th because of that mistake, unfortunately. In fact, I think Donald Green just went off twice just now, too. So he's finding his way back onto the circuit. He sits in 12th after that one. You know, knocking on wood, we're halfway through this race, and we have seen only 2 penalties so far. Karachai and Schuessler. Now, Schuessler's, I didn't quite see what it was for, but that sent him to the back of the grid.
Yeah, unfortunately for Schuessler, it's actually going to put him 2 laps down to the leaders, currently running in position number 18, and he's only on lap number 10. Meanwhile, the leaders are on their 12th lap of the day. So unfortunate for Chris Schuessler. He's not going to have the day that he was looking for, and it's kind of looking the same way for Donald Green. You mentioned that he went off the racetrack there a couple times. You would have noticed on the screen that he took a very, very sharp turn across the racetrack. Looks like he was trying to go for a pass and just overstepped a little bit too much and nearly put himself into the wall. Luckily, he was able to avoid that. But one thing to point out once again, if a driver does put themselves into the wall or runs into the back of the car ahead of them, they do have one backup car to use tonight, so they can go down pit road, take that fast repair, and get back out here in a brand new car. So I'm sure we're going to see that come into play on the pit stop for a couple of these guys.
Watching the battle with Lisa on the back of Jeremy Main, who's now at the front of the train that he was fighting with for so long. So he's pulled himself up into 8th. Still has some work to do, though. He's still 3 positions down from where he began this thing. And it might be a game of catch-up until the end for him, but we'll see. Now that he's at the front of this group, maybe he can start to pull a little bit better pace. In fact, a 1:49.9 last lap, so that's a little bit closer to his best, which is a 48.1, which he ran on lap 4. So I'm expecting he'll be able to pick it up a little bit here as he plunges down the hill towards Hogpen. Once again, you can see Lisa trying her best to stick with him. Oh, we got a car off in front of him as well. Aubrey Ayer's going to give up a position as Aubrey has had a big off in Hogpen.
Yeah, Ayer went way off into the grass, was able to gather it back up and get back onto the racetrack ahead of these drivers, but unfortunately now falling back to position number 9, was up in about 6th, as looks like we're going to have a bit of a side-by-side here. Lisa Eskridge takes a dive to the side of Jeremy Main, not able to get there that time, but Lisa Eskridge has really come alive here in the last handful of laps, looking like a driver that may have the opportunity to battle for that 6th, 7th, maybe even up to the top 5, depending on the second half of this race and how it plays out.
Worth noting that Lisa Eskridge and Robert Goulet are 2 of our hardest chargers right now. Lisa up 6, Robert up 8 spots. Both have done a fantastic job picking them off with 15 minutes left to go, but we still need a pit stop for a majority of the drivers out there. as they break into South Bend. Very difficult, swift corner. And look at how it drops off on the exit of it. Then it's up through the tricky braking of Oak Tree. It doesn't have the namesake there anymore, but it's still just as difficult. And heading down the straight, I have to say, I'm impressed. I thought Lisa was going to fall off of Jeremy, but either she's picking up some tips or she's really on a charge here.
Yeah, I think honestly that it is that Lisa's just on a charge, setting up here towards the end of the lap. We'll see what Eskridge is able to do just behind Maine, as Maine doing a nice job working through these corners. Nice fluid motion, setting up for the great exits that we're seeing here. Actually, right as I say that, Maine has a little bit of a bobble as Eskridge was able to close up just a little bit here. We'll see how this battle plays out. But like you mentioned, we are coming down here in the last portion of the race, just 14 minutes to go, and the majority of the field does still have to come down pit road. So pit strategy will come into play when it comes to positions out here on the racetrack tonight, as that could be what separates some of these very tight battles that we've seen out here, such as this battle for the position with Maine and Eskridge, as it does look like we've had a couple more drivers come down pit road, and that is Mehmet Karachai and Robert Goulet both coming down pit road here for what should be their only stop of the day.
Yep, and they actually, well, yeah, Robert is already pulling out, so he's on his way. But Mehmet, is he in long? No, that looks like a normal stop. Yep, that is a good one for him. And off he goes. In fact, a little bit quicker than Robert's pit stop. So Schultz right now just about lapping him as he is coming across the line, and he will take the lead over because Casey McDonald just pitted in. So Casey will finally give up that top spot, and so Kevin Schultz is your new leader in the number 3.
Yeah, Kevin Schultz does take over the race lead. Like you mentioned, Casey McDonald has come down pit road. This could be that flip of the switch that we need to set off pit stops for just about everyone else here on the racetrack, is you don't want to fare too far away from that strategy that Casey McDonald was running. But then again, if you're a little bit deeper back in the field, do you try to stretch it out right to the last drop of fuel and see if you can gain some positions on the racetrack? I think that's how I would approach it, as we do see a battle for position here. That is a battle between Nye and Donald Green for that 9th spot, and Donald Green not giving any space on the racetrack whatsoever here, Joe.
And you may have noticed that that pink car had nobody around them. Jeremy Maine went off, unfortunately, and gave up a ton of spots at Roller Coaster, so that's why that has separated. Meanwhile, like you said, battle for P7 here, P6 I guess you could say now. Green versus Nye along with Trippett as they break into turn 1. Kirk Clifford in front of them is a lap down. He just took his pit stop, so he is not racing for position and slowing up. They're going to go 3 wide. Nye runs out of track. He almost goes into the grass. Donald Green will fend him off, but I'm not sure if he realized he was there.
Yeah, I don't believe that he was aware that Nye was with him, as Green looks like I thought he was about to pull over and let Nye go by, but these guys not too friendly in giving each other positions, as we are getting down to the late stages of the race. But Kevin Schultz has come down pit road from the lead. He had about a 38-second lead or so over Casey McDonald. McDonald now 19 seconds back of the leader, and it's pretty wild that Casey McDonald was able to hold on to position number 2 despite coming down pit road.
Yeah, McDonald must have pulled a pretty massive gap, and he actually is getting a pull from Art Schwartz right now, another driver that's a lap down. So he's getting a nice tow. Schultz is on out with a very quick pit stop, and he emerges a little bit behind. I think he gained a bit of time. Will it be enough to help him try to run him down in these final 10 minutes?
It's all going to be about how quick Kevin Schultz can get wound back up and clear that car that's just ahead of him on the racetrack. That is a lapped car that he's going to have to get by and try to work his way back up to McDonald here. But you can see that gap already kind of stabilizing a little bit, 1.8, 1.9 between McDonald and Schultz on the racetrack. And like you mentioned, extremely quick pit stop there for Kevin Schultz. 11 seconds he spent in the pits there, and that is going to set him up here for an opportunity to potentially do a little dance here with Casey McDonald, our race leader.
So we see that battle for sixth place with Trippett being followed by Urbesh. And let's not forget about Johan Nyan there. He's certainly been Mr. Excitement today. Was that an off there from our leader that we just saw from Casey McDonald? He was awful far to the side of the track. I guess he stayed within the boundaries, but could have lost a bit going way to the exit of Oak Tree there. Meanwhile, back to that battle on the bottom of your screen. And actually, no, we're going to check out Robert Goulet on the back of Tom Crane. This is for 10th position. Oh, but a little bit of a hiccup there from Robert, and he loses time.
Yeah, Goulet loses a little bit of time to Tom Crane, and that's going to back him up towards the Mehmet Karachai machine, as Karachai going to try to work his way back up into the top 10 with just a few minutes remaining in this one, just 9 minutes. So already about 3/4 of the way through the event, these drivers know that it's just about go time to get any spots you're going to potentially get out here on the racetrack. Is again, every point means a lot here for these guys as we continue to watch the battle on the bottom of your screen. That is Tom Crane and Robert Goulet duking it out for 10th and 11th. Actually, that's the battle for 6th. I do apologize there. Edward Trippett and Neil Urbesh. As just an update, Lisa Eskridge has pulled at pit side for her pit stop here in the late stages of this one.
I was going to say, excellent fuel economy from Lisa Eskridge. She did magnificent out there considering her pace. And she's going to emerge what looks like possibly in 7th and ahead of Poulos. Now, did Poulos get a penalty? Because he was in the pits for 51 seconds. I wonder if he got a speeding penalty on his way in, because that is unusually long when everybody else was in and out in about 11 to 13 seconds.
Yeah, I definitely do believe it was a pit penalty that was issued there to George Poulos. His time on the pit lane was 1:15 compared to about 40 seconds for the other drivers. So that would be in line with a 40-second penalty for speeding. So unfortunate there for Poulos, what could have been a very solid, potentially podium run, thrown out the window with an issue on pit road.
Watching that battle for P5 there, Trippett being chased by Urbesh, and then the 10th place run with Tom Crane ahead of Goulet on Karachai, who you were talking about a little bit earlier. Mehmet, who also got penalized for car contact, though, sitting only in 12th, unable to do anything here on those two ahead of him. Needs to wait for a good exit off of one of these corners leading onto the long straights. Let's see if maybe out of Oak Tree he can set himself up.
Yeah, these drivers, 10th, 11th, and 12th, that you do see in this battle here, have all had their own share of issues tonight. Like you mentioned, a penalty for one of the drivers, and the other two have both been involved in other incidents, gone off the racetrack, had some car contact and whatnot, but now able to battle for a top 10 finish here with just 6 minutes to go. It's a very nice recovery, shows their perseverance and just sticking it out and trying to get to the end of this one. So we'll see how this one wraps up, but this is a great battle that we are seeing for that 10th spot. Tom Crane trying to pull away a little bit from Robert Goulet. Goulet under pressure from Karachai, as Karachai getting a nice run there behind the Tom Crane machine, and looks like we're about to go side by side. Nope, they opt to go back single file, and Robert Karachai gonna save, or Mehmet Karachai gonna save that opportunity for another set of corners.
I almost think he was worried about Robert kind of drifting across the track. That's natural racing line, since there's a curve down the main straight, and looks like maybe he lifted out a bit. Karachai gonna stay tight, sit tight for now. They're in that 12th position. This is one of our closest fights out on the track. Unfortunately, if you were hoping for a battle on the podium, McDonald has pulled away from Schultz, and Olan Murphy is almost 30 seconds behind the top two. It has just been a shellacking by the number 13 and the 3 on the rest of the field.
Yeah, Casey McDonald was the winner last week, so another great race for him. Gonna set himself up for a really nice start to the season when it comes to those points. And in the second place car here, Kevin Schultz, he entered tonight 11th in points, so a great gain if he can hold off in 10th, as you do see a side-by-side position swap here as Goulet going to work his way up into 10th. That puts Crane and Karachai just behind him. They're going to duke it out side-by-side for position.
Good run here from Mehmet. Tom now having lost this spot, is he going to be easier to overtake, or is Robert going to be able to hold both of them off? It looks like Tom will not lose that 11th spot, breaking down into the roller coaster. Definitely thought it was going to be the other way around, that it was going to be Mehmet who passed before, but great work by Robert, because that is a difficult one going up into the oak tree. And then, of course, as they set themselves up for the horseshoe, Robert is well clear of both of them. Karachai is going to look to the inside, but no dice, unfortunately. Tom Crane is going to stay ahead of him for now.
Yeah, Karachai definitely trying to set himself up for the right opportunity to make that pass. You know eventually he is going to make that dive. If it sticks, that's another question. As here he goes, Mehmet Karachai going to take a move here on the machine just ahead of him, driven by Tom Crane, as Crane trying to hold him off once again. And I don't think there's been a lap where Tom Crane has not been under pressure here tonight, as Karachai going to continue to try to get that spot from him. Don't think he's going to get there quite yet, but like I mentioned, you know it's going to happen where he's just going to send it and just hope it sticks.
And he's looking a lot closer this time, that is for sure. Is he going to try and do what his friend did in front of him? No, I thought he was going to also attempt to pass up into Oak Tree, but he backed out of it, even though he was mighty close to the rear wing of the 864. Robert, I guess maybe I shouldn't have doubted him, because have to remember, he is climbed well up the order. Granted, he did not set a qualifying time, so that might explain some of his ability to push his way upwards through the field, but still, he's had to make those passes. I have to say, he's done a great job at it, and maybe Mehmet will have to take a few notes on it, but he still wasn't able to do anything into the roller coaster.
As we now hop on board here with Edward Trippett, you see just behind him, that is Neil Urbash all over that rear wing. And he's trying to get by here, looking for that opportunity to make the pass. Looks like he's going to set himself up here, heading towards the set of corners. Not quite able to get there this time, but Urbash is going to look here as they head towards another straight. We'll see if Urbash able to make the move here on Tribbett this time. Not going to be able to get close enough, but we are getting down to the closing stages. Looks like we should be about 2 laps to go for these drivers right now, and Casey McDonald just absolutely having a blistering day. 6.5 second lead over Kevin Schultz, who he's just out there running laps by himself now. As like you mentioned, nearly 30 seconds back to the third place car of Olan Murphy.
Got to stay focused here. As Casey indeed got the 2 to go signal at the line. That battle between Trippett and Urbash is on once again. He's going to at least follow in his tire tracks through the roller coaster. Oh, he's a bit off the apex coming down the hill. Let's see what it looks like as they head towards Hogpin as well. Oh, a big mistake from Neil Urbash. He's off into the grass, and that's going to cost him the time. But the good news is he stays out of the wall.
Yeah, Urbash able to gather it back up and rejoin the racetrack here. He has a large gap behind him, so he shouldn't lose any more positions on the racetrack as we hop back on board here with Mehmet Karachai. And once again, we have a gaggle of cars. Robert Goulet, Alex Lidback, Tom Crane, and Mehmet Karachai all together here battling for positions 9 through 12 on the racetrack, as they should see the white flag. And I believe these drivers that are in these very tight battles are going to use that white flag like a green flag, knowing that it's time to go. We got to make these moves now.
Well, they're all getting the 2 to go signal as they go by. We need McDonald to cross for the white flag here.
Exactly.
And that number 13. So they'll get it soon enough. And Lidback actually dropped back to that 10th position recently because he had an off track coming through South Bend. So Robert manages to move himself up to 9th now. Ooh, big battle here for that 9th spot. Back and forth between them. And in fact, it looks like Lidback having more struggles as he nearly loses the position to Tom Crane, but he'll fend him off.
Yeah, unfortunately for Lidback, he's going to slide back to position number 11, like you mentioned, back towards the Tom Crane machine. But Mehmet Karachai now closing that gap up to Robert Goulet. We've seen these guys battling it out for a handful of laps now, as here comes Karachai getting past another lap car on the racetrack. Now the only car ahead of him is Robert Goulet, and he's going to have to set up for a nice run here, as Casey McDonald should face the white flag, and we should be coming here to the final sets of corners for Casey McDonald here today at VIR.
Indeed, what a performance it has been from him. Just half a lap to go. Also, unfortunately for fans of Neil Urbesh, another spin drops him to 8th spot. Lisa Eskridge now up 7 spots into P7. Robert Goulet up 9 into 9th. I guess appropriate for each of them. But this man, the farthest down we saw him all day was 2nd place, and that's with the pit stops as well. Honestly, if he had gone long, he probably could have led every single lap of this race. Casey McDonald takes it through the roller coaster. All he has to do is successfully navigate Hogpen, and he is home free to the finish line. Through the right-hander as he hits the compression and then back up the hill. Ooh, bit of an off there for Maine. More insult to injury for him. But for Casey McDonald, it is all celebrations as he takes the win in Event 2 here for Series 11.
What a fantastic drive here today by Casey McDonald, coming away with that victory. You see Kevin Schultz, he's going to cross that start-finish line as well to wrap up his night in a very solid 2nd place. As you see now, Olan Murphy going to come around to round out the podium. Great drive by all of these drivers here today. We didn't have too many large incidents on the racetrack, so I'd say for the most part, these guys can definitely treat this one as a success, with a goal of chasing down that Casey McDonald machine in the next round.
Yes, much cleaner race, I think, than some of the times we saw in the past 2 weeks. I'm sure some of the drivers had a talking to. Granted, Challenge was one of the cleaner ones back at Spa as well, but they're following that up wonderfully here for the first one. Trippett going to take it to the line, get himself a top 5. And again, one of my drives of the race has to be Lisa Eskridge, going from 14th to 7th, as Poulos unfortunately falling down to 4th in the end after he was looking like a potential podium finish. There's Lisa across the line in the hard charger, the 809 of Robert Goulet. Maybe Mehmet Karachai is going to be ahead of him, but just barely at the line. It's going to be tight, but Mehmet runs out of race.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you, Joe. Drive of the race for me was also, I mean, aside from Casey McDonald pulling away the way he did, Lisa Eskridge had a phenomenal performance here tonight. Played it very smart in the start, saw the gradual increase in position and pace as the race went on, and all of a sudden when we got to that second half of the race, Lisa Eskridge was just full throttle, intensity through the roof, picking off those positions one by one.
So let's go through our finishing order, and Casey McDonald sees himself take a pretty dominant win. Kevin Schultz, as we said, at least kept him somewhat honest with that 2nd place, about 6 seconds behind, but needs some pace. Olan Murphy will round out the podium, 38 seconds behind the leader at the end. Johan Nye climbs up to 4th, with Trippett gaining 5 spots to get a top 5. George Poulos falling off the front row, winding up in 6th spot. Lisa Eskridge has gotten a lot of praise from us. We'll see if she's proud of that one as she finishes in 7th today. Neil Urbesh was 8th, and Robert Goulet was P9. Mehmet Karasay finished 10th today. Then we've got Tom Crane in 11th, Alex Lidback 12th, and Jeremy Main in 13th. Last one on the lead lap was Donald Green in P14. You've got Aubrey Iron 15th, Kurt Clifford in 16th, and Chris Schuessler 17th. Art Schwartz was 3 laps down at the end in the 18th position. It has been a fun one, but we have more racing to come. Join us tomorrow night, January 18th, for the Sport Class here at VIR. Big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, and a huge thanks to our team tonight, Robert, Brian, Cameron, and Dougie. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and I'll see you on the track.